Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Maaike. Today's video is going to be my 10 palette review video. The first one of the year because I did manage to use another like 10 plus sort of ish palettes towards the end of 2020. These are the palettes that I bought / wanted to try before I got to the stuff in my Black Friday haul. So that's sort of going to be a nice little roundup before I get into all of this new stuff that I just recently purchased. So yeah, that's what this is going to be. I like to do these kind of videos every 3 to 4 months. Whenever I've tried 10-ish kind of palettes, I tend to do these to give you an overview of what I've tried and how I feel about them. And today it's going to be a little bit of a mixed bag, I have to say. I've got some things that I really love, and then things that really didn't work very well for me. There is not that much going on in between. So I do apologize in advance if you think I come off a bit negatively, and that's why I'm going to not sort of do this in the order I normally do these in, which is chronologically, which one I've tried first. I'm going to go alternating between something I really liked and something that I wasn't really a big fan of, so to say. So let's get started. And we're going to get started with the star of today's show, the Natasha Denona Glam palette. I already put this in my 2020 favorite palettes of the year as an honorable mention because I hadn't reviewed it yet, but this instantly went to the top spot. This is one of now one of my all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes because I knew the minute this launched that if this had the Natasha Denona eyeshadow quality that I know and love, that I was going to fall in love with this palette because this is a color story after my cool-toned, fair-skinned heart. We all know that. This I've sort of, it's a bit of a bold claim, I have to say, but in a way I almost feel that this is a really good alternative to the Urban Decay Naked 2, which is in my top 3 favorite all-time palettes. Simply because this is a bit newer, I cannot really say for sure that I love it that much, that it has dethroned the Naked 2, but I have to say that I feel it's got a very similar vibe. You do get a couple of like goldish and rose golds in here, just like the Naked 2, and then everything else is quite taupey, like cool toned and more gray leaning. You only get 5 mattes, which is why a lot of people didn't like this, but that's precisely what I like about it, because I get exactly those 5 mattes that I need to do a look. So I've got something darker to deepen things up, I've got a couple of good transition shades, something to blend it out, and that's all I need. I love a good shimmer, you know that about me. We get like some silvery, taupey, bronze, like this is like almost like a bronzy taupe, and then this is again a little bit differently. So you just get so many variations of taupe. So you knew I was going to love this. So yeah, this Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette I really like. This rose gold was surprisingly good, I have to say. I really went through a really hard loving rose gold phase a couple of years ago, and there's still a few palettes in my collection that I kinda don't get rid of because they have such good rose golds. But I think that this is a rose gold that is very much up to par to, for instance, the one that's in the Viseart Sultry Muse palette. So I think that this kind of palette, now that I have this, it's definitely replaced some palettes that I have in my collection. And for a palette to do that and to do it that instantly, for me, it's just an instant hit. I very often need a little bit more time to make up my mind and to really go like, oh, I truly love this. This quickly, I mean, of course it's up to like, you know, it's Natasha Denona, so what else is new? But yeah, I think that this is a lovely quality palette, and I hope she comes out with more of these like smaller palettes, because I think that that's a really good format. Apart, like in the entire like midi size palette line that she does that retails for around the $65 euro mark. I think I paid around 60 euros for this palette. So that's a reasonable price point, I think, and that's why I think it's quite comparable to Urban Decay palettes, because Urban Decay Naked palettes are around the 55, so I feel that this is not as far off price point wise. But yeah, the other color stories she's done in this sort of layout aren't really my favorite. So the bronze, Definitely not my cup of tea. The Love palette with the purples and the pinks I do quite like, I think, but yeah, I just hope she comes up with more of this style of palette. I actually hope she will be doing, and that's also a rumor I heard, that we might get a palette like this based off of the mini retro, because this is based off of the mini Glam palette. That came up first, and then she turned it into a larger palette. So I hope she's going to keep that going and turn that mini retro into something bigger, because I love the shades that are in there. But with those 5 shades and the price point that it has, I don't think I'll find it worth it in the end. But if she comes out with something bigger like this, I would be down. Let's talk bigger palettes first then, and talk about something that I wasn't too big of a fan of. You can't discredit Glamlite for doing great packaging. Like, their packaging, although a bit gimmicky, is absolutely lovely. This is the Cake palette. The outer box is an oven. And then you get the palette inside. And this is like really sturdy cardboard packaging, so I really like that. This is what the palette looks like. It's quite big and bulky. And you do also get a mirror here. And then it just flaps open completely, which I also appreciate. And then you get what I was hoping to be the rainbow color story of my dreams. And it's not. And the reason why I bought this palette, even though I already own a couple of rainbow palettes that I love, is because it has a really interesting like matte lime shade. Some of these other mattes look really interesting, but the main reason why I wanted to own this is because it has a lot of really fun shimmers. And I find a lot of colorful eyeshadow palettes are only available matte, and they always lack good shimmers. So that's why I was like, hey, this has interesting shimmers. A lot of people are raving about these shimmers too, as being some of the best ones they've ever used. And so I was like, I'm going to buy this and try this. And because it's such a bright color story, and brights always make me feel a little bit nervous to wear them to work, and especially because I started a new job, I was like, to wear this bright of an eyeshadow look, perhaps not. I was able to pull really, really stunning looks out of this. You've seen me film with the looks that I wore, that I did with this palette, because I used a lot of those looks to film videos with towards the end of 2020. And so you saw these on, and lots of people were complimenting me on how good my eyeshadow looked in those videos. And I have to agree with you, the looks I get from this are stunning, but the effort I have to go through to get it to look like that, no. I've now tried Glamlite, and I can tell you based off this palette that they're gonna have to come out with something incredibly, really, really cool for me to ever want to try them again, because I think this palette is just a hot mess. There's a hair that's tickling. Hold on. There we go, bit of fluff. So yeah, the reason why I'm not a fan is because this just doesn't really fit my makeup aesthetics. I can understand why people like this palette so much. It's got really, really good mattes, but they are very powdery. They have a lot of kick up, and you have to be so careful that it doesn't trickle down all over your face. I mean, I'm someone who still always like will tap off their brush, and I still, with some of these pinks, had a lot of like shadow just stuck here. Like, it wasn't really fallout, but it was just like, from blending it, it kind of just sort of went all over the place. This shade, Icy Mint, was a big disappointment, I should say, because when I blended it out, it looked dirty. It got a very sort of yucky look to it, and it didn't pull this vibrant once blended out onto the eye. And let me talk about those shimmers that everybody's raving about. Especially some of these at the top, like this one is nice, and this one is nice, and this one is nice. So the neutrally ones are excellent. But this blue and these three at the top, which is what I bought the palette for, you could say, terrible. I had to layer these 4 times to get them to even show up, and they are not as vibrant as some of the shimmers in, for instance, the Natasha Denona palette I just showed you. These, I don't know what's wrong with them, but I layered these first with a brush. They barely pick up on the brush. I went in with fingers, which is what I normally do with any shimmer I use. Didn't show up. Then I went in with a wet brush. and then I used my fingers again, and then I felt satisfied with how it built up. 4 layers. 4 layers just to get them to look something like what's going on in this palette. So for me, this is not the palette that I was hoping I would get, which was a fun, bright, colorful palette with some really good colorful shimmers. I really liked Peach, this shade. That was excellent. It was a shade I wore in my crease for the very pink toned look that I wore in some of my very first videos of the year. And also raspberry and cranberry. Like, these 3 mattes I felt were excellent. I also really liked Birthday Cake and Lime. These 2 purples, once I put them on my eye, they looked identical, even though in the pan they look very distinct. And the same goes for some of these shimmers up here. So for me, I've tried Glamlite. I think it's really fun packaging. I can see why people like these, because they are the kind of shadows that are very pigmented and where a little goes a long way. But the way that I like to do my makeup and my makeup aesthetic and how I like to do shadow based on experience, like years of experience of applying eyeshadow to my own eye shape, this is just, it's not working out for what I want. And so is this a bad palette? No. I just had expected more. That's what it boils down to. So let's talk about this palette. This is the Pat McGrath Subliminal Mothership 1. This was one of the first palettes she released, and I didn't try it until 2020 because I didn't really discover Pat McGrath until 2020. So I tried one of her quads from her 2019 holiday collection, the Nocturnal Nirvana, and I wasn't instantly wowed by it. It was definitely a palette where I felt that for how expensive it was and the amount of effort I had to put into getting those shades to not necessarily fade, but they creased on me quite badly. So I really had to figure out how to make them work. And once I did, I loved it. And then she did the Divine Rose 2, and I was like, ooh, interesting. And then I tried it and fell in love, and that led me to buy this really nice cool tone palette. I'm not sure if you can see, but the palette had a plastic cover over the mirror, and it was stuck to the mirror so badly that my mirror looks absolutely busted, which is a little bit sad because this is an expensive palette. I did get this on sale. There was like a 25% discount over the summertime, and that's when I decided to buy this. It's the most cool tone palette she does. It's also quite light and therefore quite great for someone with my skin tone, which is really fair. I really wanted to try more of her matte formula, and this has 3 really excellent mattes, so I was very happy. But I was also very intrigued with these 4 special shades that she does in this palette, as well as the 3 shimmers that you get in here. So for me, all of these shades worked really, really well. This blue is stunning. I really like this like peachy, shifty shade. And also this, which is like a blue flip. The only shade that I'm not a huge fan of is this like very yellow toned special shade. However, even though I don't like golds, and Pat McGrath puts golds in every single palette she does, this gold is very light. And it's almost like an icy gold, which is why it still works on me. So even though it's not my favorite, it does work really well. You get a nice champagne for the inner corner. You get it's a black, but it's not such an intense black where I feel I can't use it. This, I fell in love hard with Pat McGrath, and I'm very happy that I now own this palette. I now also want to buy the Divine Rose one, I think. Like, it's terrible. I feel I don't need it because I have quite a few of these like rosy toned eyeshadow palettes, so do I really need that one? You know, that's sort of what's still holding me back. But I just fell in love with the formula of Pat McGrath shadows in 2020, and that's why I just wanted to rave about this palette, because if you're looking for a really good cool tone palette, but where the Natasha Denona is all neutral, and you want something to amp it up, to really have something that's more interesting, that gives you, it's got fewer shades, but I still feel that even though you only get 10 shades, there are so many options. You can make it fully neutral if you stick to the neutrals, and you have that blue to really add like a nice pop of something on the lower lash line, or all over the lid. You just have so many options even though you only get 10 shades. And for me, this, if I ever do a top 10 favorite cool toned eyeshadow palettes, I'm pretty sure we can expect both of these to make an appearance. This was excellent. Because I don't want to come across too much of a negative Nancy, I'm just going to keep it very short and sweet. I also tried the Essence Daily Dose of Power eyeshadow palettes. This is part of the Essence range that came out in the for the fall-winter season of 2021. So this is sort of like one of their newer palettes, and I always like trying these just to see what it's all about. I selected this one because the other two was just, you know, another rosy toned one, another warm toned one. I was like, oh, Essence, well, if you're trying to do mint greens and blues and like coppery shades, let's try it. Unfortunately, this really wasn't that good. The quality of it isn't too terrible, but I do feel it blends away a little bit. The shimmers don't really go together very well. You kind of get two looks in one palette. You get a bluish green look with a silver, and then you get a warm toned look with like a champagne, some reds, this like bronzy orangey shade, and then you get one matte to like blend everything out. That's sort of what you get in here. The color story didn't wow me. The quality didn't wow me. Is this a terrible palette? No, but I know that Essence can do much better eyeshadow quality than this. I mean, their limited edition Disney palettes that they came out with over the fall time had better quality than this. It just did. So, Essence, what's going on? Like, try and be more consistent, please. Please. This just, I would not recommend. If you see these in store, I believe they're quite cheap and cheerful. I think they're only like 4 or 5 euros. And you think, oh, that's going to be a great affordable eyeshadow palette. No, it's not. Let's talk about one more like bougie product that I surprisingly liked quite a bit. I was surprised with how much I liked the Dior limited edition for Holiday 2020 collection palette. This is the part of the Golden Nights collection, and it's in 089 Black Night. The packaging is absolutely gorgeous. I still have my little applicators here, and inside you get different renditions of gray with a burgundy, you could say. You get a very deep, like almost black matte satiny kind of shade. You get a very blue toned shade. You get a true charcoal. You get something that's a bit more silvery leaning, and then that black and burgundy in the middle. I did a look with this for my Get Ready With Me, and I was so happy with it. This is really good quality. It's very limiting because of the color story, I have to say. I mean, the only thing you can do with this is a smoky eye. But I was very much intrigued with some of the palettes that we saw being released in the second half of 2020, which was like grays with reds. It's why I bought the Melt Waiting Room palette. And I feel that if I were to pair those two palettes together, wouldn't that be stunning? I think that can be a fun one. But I definitely still need to try my Melt palette to see if I like it at all, even though you can't even buy them anymore, I believe, from the Beetlejuice collection. But yeah, this palette just, when I saw this announced, I knew instantly that I wanted to own it, and I haven't felt that way about any Dior eyeshadow in like 10 years. So I don't think, when was the last time I bought Dior eyeshadow? No, it wasn't 10 years ago. It was more like 5 years ago or so. That's like the last time I really invested in a Dior palette. And this one I just thought was something very unique for the brand, because they tend to do quite basic things. And this is still basic, but it's sort of like a very wearable smoky eye, and I really appreciated that. So I did really enjoy this. I can link the video where I use this down below in case you want to see the look I did with this. So the next palette on the list are the e.l.f. bite-size palettes, and I told you that there weren't that many eyeshadow palettes today in the video that are sort of like in the middle, that I don't totally love and don't totally care for. These do fit into that middle ground, and the main reason for that is because I was not wowed by every single one of these three. I got 3 of them to try it out because you pretty much get one look in one of these little palettes. These palettes didn't come to the Netherlands until the end of the year, which is why I am only trying them now. and I got the green one, the Hot Jalapeno, a neutrally one called Truffles, and the Acai Blue Toned one. Now what I've heard, since I heard so many people raving about these all year before I could get my hands on them, what I find a bit of a miss is that I didn't know that these three palettes, all three have a different formula. It seems, at least to me. These I've only heard people rave about, but I've heard very few people say that these perform differently depending on the colors that are inside it. The blue one, don't get it. Please stay away. This is very, very powdery. It doesn't chalky even. It doesn't stay put on the eye. This was just such a hot mess to use. It just wasn't very vibrant. This was one that really, really disappointed me in the end. And I didn't hear that many people say that the quality of these just varies depending on the color story you get. And I feel that if I'd known that, I would have only gotten one or two that everybody had been raving about and not like just willy-nilly. So the Hot Jalapeno is nice. It's green tones with a pop of a bright yellow. However, with this as well, I felt that the two shimmers were okay, but the two mattes definitely left something to be desired. And I think that a lot of people were just raving about these because they are so cheap. And the quality, I mean, I think it's better quality than the Essence palette for sure. But it just didn't really wow me. I think that even at this price point, I think over here, they are 3, maybe 4 euros each. 4 euros, I think. Catrice does little mini palettes for 4 euros for $3.99. And those are a lot better than these ones are. So I can get affordable makeup that's just as expensive that is better than this. So for me, these aren't necessarily worth the very affordable price point. If you want to get one, I would get Truffles. This has been my favorite. This one I want to keep around, especially for like travels, because this is just the easiest one to use. You get a really good like crease shade, a transition shade, something for the lid, and something to deepen things up. This is a black with a little bit of sparkle, but I feel it works really well as a liner. And this just works really well. So the neutral one I thought was the best one, but a lot of brands can do neutral palettes. So even at this price point, I think that it's nice. I'm glad I own it now, but I would never repurchase it again. And I'm definitely not getting more of this line. Let's rave for a minute, and that's to do with these two palettes. We're getting into some like indie territory now too. Persona Cosmetics is a brand I wanted to try because I heard Kelly Gooch rave about it so much. I got the Identity 1 and 2 so I could get free shipping. I was not hit with a customs fee. Yay. And of the two, the Identity 1 has to be my favorite, so I'll talk about the Identity 2 first. The quality of these palettes is excellent and they are very comparable in how they perform. I just felt that the color story of this just didn't really come together for me as much as I'd hoped. So the Identity 2 would be my least favorite of the two, mainly because of the color story. And I kind of knew that going into it because I think that this color story looks quite haphazard. But my main, well, it's not an issue, but the main reason why this isn't like my favorite of the two is because I feel some of the shades in this palette look differently in the pan than they do in the on the eye. This, for instance, looks like a burgundy plum shade, but it pulled very red and it was very warm against my complexion. The same for the bronze shade. It's got a very strong yellow tone gold, which I'm never a fan of. So I feel that like this half of the palette worked really well for me. And then the other half of the palette I'm a bit, because these three shades were lovely. I really, really liked it. It's got a really good black. It's got some really pretty like transition shades as well. I do appreciate these two lighter shades, but these four I wasn't a huge fan of because I had hoped that this was a bit more like plummy, like it looks in the pan, and then it could have been a really nice combination with the green, which is what I did for the look, but I felt it didn't look right. So I definitely need to play around with this color story a bit more, but the shades themselves just have excellent quality, and it is very similar to the quality that is in the Identity 1. I now understand the hype, you guys. This is a very neutral eyeshadow palette. The shimmers in this, Glamlite, please take note. because these shimmers are not metallic, but they are like so rich and creamy and still very vibrant looking on the eye, especially this shade right here in the middle called Bombshell. Oh my word, so lovely. I can definitely see myself using this a lot more, even though there are some shades in here where I'm like, this is a bit warm toned for me. I do really like this plummy shade, and where I felt with the Identity 2, I had shades that once I applied them, they didn't do what I thought they were gonna do. With this, I had no issue whatsoever. Every look I did with this was excellent. I used it a couple of times already, just on the fly, because I was like, oh, I need to do a look, but I don't have time to take pictures, and I've used this. Quality is excellent. Really, just the way these shades blend, especially the mattes. Wow, the mattes in this just blend so perfectly. The shimmers are vibrant. I know that I'll get a lot of use out of this, but I feel that this is a really good standalone palette, whereas the two, kind of, I would pull it into the one to give this a little bit more interest, you could say. So that's why I'm happy to own two. I'm definitely not angry at how the Identity 2 performs. It is a lovely palette. It's just a little bit more difficult to work with. Oh well. So let's talk about something that didn't really work out for me. And I already put the Beauty Bay Pastels palette into my worst products of 2020 video. And I told you that I would give you an update in today's video to tell you more about it. I've mentioned a few times already that these are very chalky, very difficult to work with. I mean, for mattes, life shouldn't be this hard. That's sort of where I'm coming from. They swatch beautifully. The swatches on this just look absolutely stunning. They just don't stay put on your eyes. And that's what I need from an eyeshadow palette. I need it to stay put all day. These shadows look really good once they are first applied. People told me, but it's pastels, you need to put it over a white base. No, have you seen how light I am? If pastels don't show up on me, we have a problem. It's not the issue of these not showing up. They show up. I can blend them out. It's fine. It's just that how vibrant these look in the pan, I had to work so hard for, meaning layer after layer after layer of shadow, which with a matte, you should not have to do. Like a matte, you should put on, you blend it out, and it's there. It has nothing to do with the fact that these are light shadows. It has everything to do with the fact that these are just a chalky hot mess that start falling off your eyes after 2 hours. You should not have to use glitter glue with a matte. You shouldn't. This yellow I put all the way like into the inner corner. I had to use my fingers for it to go on well enough, first of all. And at the end of the day, there was no yellow left. It had simply just fallen off. It hadn't faded. The shadow had just cracked and fallen off my eyes, and I double prime my lids. I have never used shadow that does this, ever in my life. I am not someone who says, this is bad makeup, please stay away, unless I truly feel that way. Because this, I would say this is bad makeup, please stay away. This does not perform well. This looks really great. This is the kind of palette that you buy to do Instagram looks with. You buy it so you look great on Insta. But this doesn't work if you need to go out later in the day. This won't work. So after that very low note, wow, let's talk about something that I loved. The Solomona eyeshadow palette from Odin's Eye was very successful for me. I was very intrigued when I started seeing this palette popping up. It has a really lovely texture like on the outer packaging. I just think that's already stunning. And then we get this. And this is again the kind of color story that made me go, what do I do with that? It's got lots of neutrals, got a bit of warmth, but then it also has like this teal shimmer and this like almost like a taupey kind of shade. We get this really stunning duochrome here, really lovely, and then we get a pop of lavender. And there's just something about that lavender with some of these like mustardy, orangey warm tones that just works so incredibly well. I was a little stunned when I did looks with this. This is definitely a palette I would like to go back to do more looks with, and I think it also has a couple of really good one-off shades that you can pull into other palettes. Do I really need this palette for the mattes that are in here? No. I feel I only really get one transition shade, which is this one. This is a bit too orange. This could work, I guess. And this is also quite warm toned for what it is. I would have liked this to be more cool toned. Then it would have worked better for my personal tastes. This cream colored shade I don't necessarily need either. And I feel that these two shades are just a little too similar. So is it a perfect palette? By no means, but I love what this palette has to offer. I really enjoy the looks I did with this. It's got great blendability. The shimmers show up really, really well. It's got something unique to it as well, so it definitely does stand out within all of the eyeshadow palettes that I have in my collection. This is just, I'm very happy with this. The brand, however, hasn't come out with any other color story that truly intrigues me. Also because they have been doing pressed glitters in some of their palettes, which I'm not a huge fan of. So for me, I'm really sort of, now that I've tried this, curious after more of Odin's eye line, and I definitely want to try some more shadows if they come out with a color story that I enjoy. Right, so I do apologize a little bit if the angle has changed, but my camera battery died because I had to wait all the time for my neighbors to stop banging on walls. Because they're still remodeling and it's just a bit of a mess. But I still have 2 palettes left, so I thought I'd quickly give my battery a recharge. It's been quiet for the past 20 minutes, so I hope I can just breeze through the final 2 palettes in this video. The palette I'm going to continue with is one that I sadly was a little bit disappointed in, and it's the Nomad Cosmetics Tokyo Harajuku palette. Another pastel palette. And before you say, but you just don't know how to work with pastels, hear me out. This is a lovely palette. The color story I looked at and it made me a little bit nervous because I didn't really know what to do with it. And then when I sort of swatched and played around with it a little bit, I came to the conclusion that it would probably be best to do a look with sort of like these like more neutrally shades. Step 1. One with like the greenish, bluish shade and the yellows that are in here. And then one with the purpley pinks. Out of those 3 looks, I only really like the look I did with the purpley pinks, unfortunately. The greens had the same issue as I had with some of the shades in the Glamlite Cake palette, where they just looked a little dirty once I started blending them out. So I think there's just something in my undertone of my skin tone and sort of my complexion overall that just doesn't really go well with the undertone of the 2 greenish blues that are in here. So I tried to use those in the crease. I have no issues with the quality of these shades. You get a full row of mattes, a full row of satins, and a full row of these like very iridescent shimmers. And everybody's been raving about these iridescent shimmers and how lovely they are. And they are definitely more impactful than the ones in the Glamlite. So I'm glad to have had a try with this, a play with this, because some of these are really stunning. However, where they look like a very soft pink, a green, a purple, a yellow, and a pink, like a more vibrant fuchsia pink in the pan, these are all just like toppers. I felt that there wasn't enough base pigment in these to really be able to use them on their own. Also the darker ones, I felt it just ends up looking like sparkle on your eyes and you don't get that lovely yellow undertone. So for me, that's why this palette was a little bit lacking. The satins were so soft. I was able to blend them up, blend them quite well, but they had to be built up quite a bit because they were so soft that it was very easy to blend them away. The mattes were really well done, I think, especially that lavender. That one is just, that's great. That's a good lavender shade, so I did really like those. And I also like these grays in here. So I was able to pull really pretty looks out of it. It's just, for me, it was just a bit lackluster, and I want a palette to be something that I can reach for and do different combinations. But the way this palette is laid out, the shades that you get in it, and how these shadows perform combined just make it feel to me like it is more limiting than I had expected and what a lot of people have been saying it does for them. So that pinky purple look that I did, I would like to make that 1,000,000 times over. But the other two, I'm not sure. And then do I want to keep around this entire palette just to be able to create that one look? I don't think I really have to, because I have a really good pastel pink in my Creepy Cute. I have a really good matte lavender shade in the Creepy Cute as well. And I think that a purpley and a pinky shimmer like this, I already have in some of my duochromes from Clionadh. So I feel that therefore, it's just not very unique compared to everything that I already have and what these shades end up doing on my eyes. If you don't own any pastels yet, and if that's something you would like to try, then I think that this palette can be a really good starting point, precisely because you get those different textures and everything that it's got going for it. It really is a good palette. It's just I didn't really get from it what I was hoping I would get, even though I was able to pull some really pretty, stunningly soft looks out of this, because that's ultimately what you will get. So I have no issues with these being pastels, with these being light, with how these performed on the eyes, even though at times I felt I had to work a little bit harder with that satin row to really make them show up. But yeah, it is a really good pastel palette. It's just what I wanted from it, which is especially that row with those stunning shimmers. I felt that they were just not as special. I have indie singles that do something similar that I would pull in much more quickly than this. In fact, for instance, this one I feel is quite similar to that iridescent shimmer you get in the Juvia's Place Mauves palette. I just don't feel it's really, really super unique compared to some of the things I already have in my collection. So for me, this isn't a bad palette. Where with the Beauty Bay pastels, I'm like, just stay away from it. Don't even try it. I can see why people love this. It's just, again, for my makeup aesthetic, for my makeup taste, within my makeup collection, this isn't adding anything new to the table. I think if I had picked this up 2 years ago, I would have liked this a lot better, but I have just tried other pastels and pastel-y kind of shimmers that I like better that I already have in my collection. So I really think that if you are trying to like start your pastel collection, that this definitely I can see a place for this in people's lives for sure. But in my life, it's just a little superfluous. But yeah, I had never tried Nomad before, so yeah, I wanted to try it. So let's talk about Strobe Cosmetics. Well, Strobe, they're now called Shroud. And I did get one of their palettes. This is not the palette that you might think it is, because I did order the It's Freaking Bats, but my order number is somewhere in the 5,000s. And they're currently making their way through the order numbers with 4,000s. So for me, it's going to take a while until I get that palette, but I did get myself the Arcana, because this has been on my wish list for a year straight. And I have to say that this did not disappoint. And this is... in terms of a good jewel toned eyeshadow palette, like this looks really deep. So you might think, Micah, how is that even going to work on your complexion? Trust me on this. This color story, it's so cleverly done. I get a great transition shade that's more neutral. I get a great transition shade that's a bit more warm toned. Then I get some deeper shades, some deeper mattes in both of those families to do a rounded look. So I can do a warm toned look that's has more depth to it. I can do a cool toned look that has more depth to it, because if you can't tell, cool toned, warm toned. And that's sort of also what I did. I did a look with, I think, the blues and the purple, and I did a separate look with the greens and the purple, and then I did a look with all of those warm tones, because we all know how I feel about warm tones. But I do have to say that I can, for instance, see that mustardy yellow working with the greens quite easily. So I definitely still need to mix and match the two sides. This like really deep rose gold was stunning too. I love that red. That's stunning. The only shade that you know how I feel about golds. It's not my favorite, but this gold it's dirty. It's this dirty, greenish, really dark, almost like tarnished gold kind of shade. And that I do like. For instance, that gold again with the greens or the gold with the blues, I think again can work really well. So I can see so many more looks happening with this palette. And what I loved, what makes this palette just so scrumptious, is the fact that everything has a very, very deep base. So it still has a really great deal of shimmer too. These shimmers do show up really, really well, but everything has a really, really dark base. So this is a smoky palette, you could say, but really nice, richly pigmented jewel tones, and especially that purple. I would buy the palette just for that. I really would. But I also love the really nice royal blue. I love this emerald green shade. Like I said, the shimmers in this are really nice. And I hadn't tried any shimmers yet from Shroud because the Creepy Cute that I already mentioned before is all matte. So I knew their mattes I had no issues with, but these shimmers, and you know I love shimmers over mattes, so for me, if the shimmers in a palette don't work, I kind of go like, ugh, don't. But these were just lovely, so easy to blend, so easy to work with, and for these being so dark, the blendability of these was just on point. It's such a great palette. I can't wait until I get my It's Freaking Bats, because that has an even more unique color story, and if it has the same quality as this has and the Creepy Cute that I already own, Shroud Cosmetics is definitely a brand that I will be keeping an eye out for. If they release something new, I think I might just buy it. Like, I don't have their Divinity palette because I don't like that color story. It only has one shade, which is that bright purple that's in the Divinity palette. That's the only shade that really appeals to me. But if they come out with a color story that I like, I will snatch it up. I won't even think about it. It's gonna go on the wish list straight away, for sure. Because Shroud Cosmetics has some of the best eyeshadow quality I've ever tried. So there you have it. Those were all of the palettes that I wanted to talk to you about in today's video. So please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. I would like to know what palette you've tried last and what you thought of it. Was there anything that you tried that didn't really work out, like it was the case for me here? It's a bit funny because to me, actually, that these are the palettes I used last in the year. They aren't necessarily the palettes I bought last. Like the Tokyo Harajuku and also the Cake palette I already owned in like June, July, August. Like I already bought them over the summertime, and I had been putting them off and putting off trying them, putting off trying them. Maybe that just based on already swatching these, I was sort of like, I had an inkling that maybe these weren't the kind of palettes that I would fall in love with. And I tend to see that also in like reviews and like what I want to review over on my blog. The ones I love, I want to get to straight away. And then the ones I feel like so-so about kind of go in the middle. And then the ones that I don't feel very enthusiastic about, I kind of let it peter out, and then I end up decluttering them, and then I've never reviewed them on my blog. So for me, it's good to do these kind of videos to give you the full lowdown. So it's sort of been a 50-50 split for me this time round. Some things I truly adored, and some things I was a bit about. But yeah, that's what I wanted to update you on in this video. Let me know in a comment down below if you have experience with any of these palettes and what you think of them, because I think that might be very different from how I feel. And then I'm just going to try now, get to trying all of those things that I put in my Black Friday haul, so I can do another one of these in a few months' time when I've tried another 10 palettes. Since I bought lots of little things, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be a lot more than just 10 palettes, because I think I will, for instance, group the Huda Beauty palettes together as like one thing, because it's like very small palettes. Also the taupes and the mauves and the berries that I have from Juvia's Place, like that's like, it's only one look in a palette, so I don't really need too much time to make my mind up to be able to use all of the shades. So the next time I do this video, I think we'll have a lot more palettes to talk about, because I kind of like then keep them in the little families like I did with the elf today. I think I will be doing that. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more by me. I make 3 new videos a week, so I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!